Hello, my dear friends. Okay, I'm back with another video on the topic of theme. This is a big one. This is one of the biggest things you might wrestle with in your memoir. So there are a lot of little nuances that we can talk about for days and days and days. I mean, at least I can. But this question is one that writers don't always ask up front, but they may ask after they get some feedback. How do I make sure my theme is present throughout my story? And there's a few different things you can do. First of all, if you didn't watch my video from yesterday with regards to how do I figure out what my story is about, within that video I talked about the word desire and identifying your desires that connect to your theme. This video is going to jump from that, particularly in the context of desire, because what you really want to do is use language that pulls in those desires, that pulls in what you wanted in various points of your story, because that's really the theme. That's the connecting point. I want to be happy. I want to find love. There's going to be different iterations of that throughout your entire story because you've identified it as your major theme. You've identified it as that connecting thread that goes from beginning to end that tells your readers what this story's about, okay? So you're going to use language that reverberates that theme and those desires. So let me give you an example of this. I have a client who is writing a story about a health journey that she went on. And at first she is telling me, I think my story's about, really coming to terms with how my body has changed and looked, my physical appearance, and just learning to love myself for who I am. Physical appearance, physical changes or not, who I am inside is really what matters. That's a lovely theme. That's wonderful. And of course, we can all relate to that. Maybe when we were teenage girls, teenagers are super harsh on themselves. And then as we grow, we try to figure out how we look and how we want to be perceived in the world and all of that, right? So there was a clear theme there. But then as she wrote, it shifted. And she's like, my story really isn't about that. It's about learning to accept who I am in a different way. Okay, so it shifted. So what we needed to do was go back to the parts of the manuscript that she had written and adjust that language, because we're not talking about your physical appearance anymore. We're talking about something else. We're talking about acceptance in another way. So it's very similar, but what she did is she identified that she had started writing her book on what came out as more of a minor theme, something that wasn't as important to her. It wasn't as valuable as the lesson that she really wanted to give to her readers. And that theme and that lesson, those desires lived really deep down. She had to start writing in order to figure it out. And I see this a lot. This happens a lot. So don't be surprised if it happens to you. But I also want you to be open to the fact that your theme may shift too. It may shift and shift and shift and shift, okay? That's okay. But what you want to pinpoint when you shift theme, or when you're looking at theme and you're trying to tie it all together, are a couple different things, okay? Number one, you want to use transitions between sections and scenes and chapters, okay? Those reflective pieces that I've talked about in another video or two, commentary about, what you've learned from this particular event, that should be using language that feels very thematic. It's going to be tying into your theme, talking about, how you wanted happiness or love or whatever you wanted, the lessons you learned within that context, okay? Think of your theme as like a pair of like rose-colored glasses or whatever colored glasses. You're looking at the world through those glasses, providing your perspective with a tint. That's what your book is. It's like your tinted story. So on the point of transitions and language that you want to use, if I told you that my theme in my book about my divorce, for example, which is not what I'm writing, but we're going to pretend it is. If my theme was about escaping an abusive partner, escaping, abuse, surviving abuse, I'm going to use language that speaks to survival, feeling safe, protecting myself, that type of language, versus something about self-love. I'm going to be talking about acceptance, worth, love, obviously, that type of language where you're connecting to your theme. I learned to accept myself as this imperfect person, whatever. So the transitions between sections and between chapters are going to tie in your events. Every event that you live through is going to teach you probably a couple small things here and there, right? Maybe one big thing, a couple small things. So you're going to focus on your focal point in a particular theme is going to be what that lesson is, or what ties to your desire. So that's number 2, besides transitions. It's the focal point of what you're really trying to get at by sharing this theme, this scene. If you are struggling finding some language that ties into your theme within a particular scene, it might be that your scene doesn't belong. It might feel like your scene is important because, well, it happened and it happened within that time frame and that person was in it or whatever. There are reasons why it feels like it might belong, but if it doesn't help move your theme forward, it may be a scene that you cut out. So think about that as well. How does the scene move it forward? For example, in my divorce story, if I shared an experience I had with my ex's family at some holiday party, and maybe someone made like a rude little comment to me, and it made me think like, that they were disrespecting me, but my ex wasn't standing up for me or something. Might that have been a problem in our marriage? Yeah. I mean, I probably would have gotten upset about it and mentioned it to him and told him that, I felt really sad or offended that he didn't stand up for me. But maybe that's not tying into my theme of learning, seeking love, looking for love because I needed to learn to love myself. It could have been a vital scene, right? Me expecting him to defend me, me expecting him to show me how much he loves me because he would jump to my defense. Well, then he didn't. So maybe that is part of the theme, but see how you have to kind of start looking at it from different angles. That scene might have just been, me misunderstanding something someone said, and it was a misunderstanding and it didn't amount to anything. But if I internalized it in a certain way, it might be relevant as well. So you want to look at what the focal point of the scene is. And if you're focusing on the wrong thing in a scene, you could try to refocus with your theme in mind, or you could just cut the scene because it might not be relevant. You also want to use just small little particular phrases that tie into your theme. If you're talking about self-love, might you want to use that word a couple times? There's synonyms, right? Acceptance, self-worth. You want to give the reader clues on what you're talking about. But because this is not a self-help book or a personal development book, we're not going to step back and start lecturing the reader about, learning to love yourself and making sure that, you know your self-worth and you are valuing yourself. And the way that you treat yourself is the way you're telling people how you should be treated by them as well, right? Those are all great lessons, but we aren't stepping back and telling the reader those things. So we need to use language that helps them connect with that theme and see through our actions what those lessons are. So let's recap a little bit. You need to use transitional phrases. You want to connect scenes. So it's going to be like something that connects the previous scene, the previous scene to the scene that it follows. If this is maybe a chapter transition, it can maybe be something throwing in at the end of the chapter. It's not always necessary, but sometimes what you should look for is it hard to see if these two scenes or these two chapters, how they're related. Is it hard to see how they're related? They're related with the theme. So if we're not understanding how these two things are existing in the book together, how these two chapters are in alignment with moving your story forward, or if we're not understanding why you chose a particular scene and maybe it's not feeling connected to the last or the next, it's because there's no transitions to connect them. If they are indeed connected, if they are indeed relevant and related, and they're all, matching up to your theme, and there's something there for us, then just tell us, right? You want to, okay, I thought that experience was bad, but little did I know, I'm using some horrible cliches here, but little did I know that I had something coming up that was even worse, whatever. Like, you have to connect the past with the next, the previous with the next, so we know why these two scenes maybe that don't fall in line on the timeline, but they're related somehow, right? So just take a step back from your book, your current manuscript, and see and look for these things. Do I use phrases that tie in my theme? Do I use connection statements that help connect scene to scene to scene with thematic language, or chapter to chapter, or whatever? You don't need to hammer the transitions home and start repeating yourself. That's what transitions can start feeling like if you have too many. But you do need some connecting pieces to tie it all together. I think of it like your theme is on a little needle with a golden thread, right? And you're just sewing it together. And you're going to see it here when it comes up, and you're not going to see it when it dips down, but it's there. It's tying things together, and hold on, wait for it. It's coming back up. Okay? So you want to find ways to connect the pieces, connect the dots, put it all together for us. And again, look at what you're focusing on in a scene. Are you focusing on the thing that draws your theme out, or are you focusing on maybe the thing that has the most action, the most flash and bang, and the most entertainment, the thing you think your readers are going to be shocked by? If that's relevant to your theme, great. If not, it's probably not necessary to share, or at least not put the focal point on. So I hope that gives you a little bit more to think about with regard to your theme and how you tie it all together. I want you to know that this is a very tricky thing to do. Theme is one of those words that can haunt a memoirist because it really is hard to nail down. It can be hard to tie together. It can be hard to really find what it is and where your story lives. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's easy to see and you're like, oh yeah, I know what my story's about. That's perfect. But you still have to make sure the readers know. And you have to, this is about communicating to your readers in ways that they are able to visualize your theme. They're able to see that golden thread, and they're able to understand why all of this stuff is connected and how that had an impact on your life in a positive way. Typically, the lessons in a memoir are going to be somewhat positive, right? There's going to be some type of value, which is has a positive connotation. It's not negative value, right? We don't give people like minus $20 when they need when they need something, right? We don't deduct money from their pocket when they're asking for value from us. So we give them something. It's a positive exchange. So you're looking for that positive kind of, that's why I call it a golden thread. It's something of value. It's positive. This is about communicating that positive message to your readers. Despite all of this hard stuff you went through, there's something that comes out of this, and I'm going to lead you there, and we're going to go step by step by step with the golden thread. Just stick with me. Here we go. Okay? So let me hear what other comments and questions you have on the theme. We'll continue talking about it if you have more questions, and come back for my next video. It's going to be a doozy.